Hello, and welcome to this webinar, Removing the Barriers to Remote Radiology. Today, we'll be discussing how one particular healthcare provider was able to improve clinical resilience, flexibility, and productivity with a secure remote radiology solution. My name is Cheryl Isherwood. I'm a senior sales engineer at Citrix, and I work within the pre-sales team with a focus on our public sector customers. Before Citrix, I worked in the NHS for 14 years across a variety of IT roles and for a number of different NHS trusts. And I'm very passionate about looking after our NHS and exploring digital solutions that can not only help to enable our clinicians, but also to maintain data security. I'm joined today by Jonathan Murden and Christian Swenderman. John, we met several years ago when I was a Citrix customer myself, but would you like to introduce yourself for everyone?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm John Murden. I'm a principal solution engineer here at Citrix. But prior to joining Citrix, I was actually head of IT infrastructure and lead architect at Portsmouth Hospital Trust, where we indeed use Citrix to deliver a Follow Me desktop across the whole hospital. So the entire hospital has access to a Follow Me desktop solution.
Brilliant. And Christian, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm go-to-market strategy manager at Citrix, which means that I'm connecting with our customers and partners to learn how our products need to adapt to change and what it needs to be successful for us at Citrix, but also for our customers in the field.
Excellent. Okay, so let's get into this topic. According to the Royal College of Radiology, the current severe shortfall of radiologists is forecast to rise to 44% by 2025. This is a huge challenge for healthcare providers and patients globally. So it's not surprising that remote radiology solutions are on the rise to try and deliver patient care and overcome some of the struggles of long waiting lists and those workforce shortages. But remote radiology or teleradiology is nothing new. Christian, can you start by giving us a brief overview of teleradiology? We've been talking about this a lot lately, but this is actually something that's been around since the mid-90s. Is that right?
Yes, correct. And I'm also around Citrix for a long time. So I've been on the partner and the distribution and customer side for myself before I joined Citrix. And I already in the past years saw how the whole graphics stack from Citrix for delivering these 3D and radiology images is improving more and more. And I guess we all know that in the past years, we now moved forward to work remote, as Citrix always was capable of delivering remote work, but now we had to. But the last half year, we also see that new concepts of how we work together, collaborate also with other companies is being improved, is rethought. And this is something we want to highlight also in today's webinar, that telemedicine, but also remote radiology and collaboration, all these things becomes different and new and very exciting as well with the technology given these days.
Yeah. And John, what happened to radiologies when the COVID-19 pandemic struck?
Yeah, Cheryl, I mean, we all know how when COVID struck, we all had to work from home. You know, there's this sudden rush to get everybody safe and secure and working from home. And that in turn was the same for healthcare providers and the NHS. What we found is that the radiologists had to now be able to work from home because they were having to isolate. Perhaps they had a family member or there's a reason they themselves had to shield. It could be that they were actually coming into contact with people with COVID in the hospital to go through that isolation period, or perhaps even catching it themselves, so having to be at home, or indeed looking after our children. We all know we all had to work from home and do the homeschooling. So there's various things that happened that meant that the radiology departments were very short-staffed in the hospital, and that was leading to impacts in patient care, delays on reporting. So very quickly, the hospitals had to adapt and had to allow people to work from home. So what you found is that there was an influx of investment to remote radiology solutions, allowing people to work from home. But there was also a relaxation in the reporting rules. So in fact, the guidelines were relaxed by the Royal College of Radiology to allow people to take kit from in the hospital and take that home and be able to work remotely in some fashion. Anything was better than nothing is basically what they decided. Having some sort of reporting capability was better than having no reporting capability at all. That led to the rise in solutions that were put in place in quite a rushed and panicked manner without being thought through. And that's, I think, where we can hopefully talk today about the Citrix solution and how that differs.
Yeah. One of the healthcare trusts you worked with closely during the pandemic was Royal Cornwall Hospital, and you helped to deliver a solution to support their radiologist team. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how that conversation came about?
Yeah, so as I said before, that sort of panic, let's get people working from home, let's allow people to take kit home. I had a call late one evening from the head of IT over at Royal Cornwall, who I know, Rob, who said, look, we've not only have we got one of our most important radiologists sort of retiring and moving out of the region, but she's offering to still want to work for us and still help with this backlog. She knows we're under pressure. How can we enable her to work in somewhere out of patch? But also, some of my team, some of the radiologists have had to isolate. There's been an outbreak in the department where everybody got sent home at one point. It's really impacting how we're able to deliver care. Do you have a solution? Could Citrix help? And that's really where we worked out not only how we could help them, but showed them how the Citrix Cloud service that we have could very quickly be implemented and allow a radiology reporting virtual workstation to be accessible from these clinicians' homes.
So what about that solution? How did it address those challenges?
Yeah, so there were three main challenges we needed to focus on. One was cost efficiency. So they had a limited budget to deliver this solution, buying all of the hardware, the workstations, the kit needed, the connectivity needed to implement that for their 30 staff was way above what they actually had as a budget. There was a limitation on resources. So their staff and IT staff building, configuring, shipping, and implementing these devices in clinicians' homes. So there was a real big resource constraint there, but also resource constraint with staff being sent home, staff being off sick, or staff indeed retiring. But also there was the security element. So whenever they looked at implementing a more traditional VPN solution or picking up a workstation and putting it in someone's home, there were too many security criteria there that meant it was a very clunky, a very poor experience. The clinician could perhaps work on the PACS image, but they didn't have the other resources for them. They maybe didn't have their EPR. They maybe didn't have their email or their chat that they were using to communicate with the teams. So it was quite a clunky, was the description I got told. It was quite a clunky experience. It impacted workflows and how the clinician was used to working. So there's a few factors there that really needed to be dealt with.
Yeah. And not the best use of resources they've got available to them if it's only for that single task, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you had a very expensive solution able to do only one thing in the clinician's home.
Yeah. And is Royal Cornwall Hospital unique in the solution it needed? What about hospitals outside of the UK? Are the challenges across Europe different? Christian, you're working with clients across EMEA. What's been your experience?
So one of the things I observed is that many of the applications we see have grown in the past years, and some of these applications were not meant to scale into this size of use. So the complexity of the application and how we can deliver it, how we can manage centrally, that's the one thing. And the other one is when we think of where access is data, where data is accessed as of today. Can I, as John just said, bring this device to the clinician's home? Can I access this data from home? Who else is maybe watching over my shoulder in this home location? So when we talk about compliance, who is able to view the data? Is it okay that the data is being downloaded to a location which is not the hospital? So this is one of the big differences also when we talk about the Citrix streaming of the data, the streaming the image, which is not permanently being stored on an off-site location. So we need to make ourselves aware of that there are different guidelines as of today, how we can use data, where we can use data, who is able to see this data and store it. And the other, and this is then the complex question we see, are we allowed to leverage these solutions that exist as of today? So cloud-based solutions like Citrix does, and we have our trust center. We have the central location where these information are given, and Cornwall is one of the examples, but there are many others out there that highlight that we can leverage these solutions, and that we need to work together to define what kind of access model, what kind of delivery model, and then in the end also what kind of data can I store and review at what location. And we have the answers to it.
Yeah. So is this a solution just for those working remotely? Because obviously the majority of staff are still in the hospital because they need to be patient facing.
That's a very good point. Some hospitals respond also, we don't need a remote access solution because we just work within the hospital. But we should also think that in a hospital, I need to go to the 7th floor to the radiology, to then go to the 1st floor where I need to review data, to then to the 2nd floor to visit the patient. And this is also remote work we can enable. Why do we need to move between the floors? Why do we need to move between the devices? Why can't I just have one single device from which I can access all the data, can control other machines or access other machines that physically reside? This is also something people often are not aware, that their Citrix solution allows them also to access physical desktops, physical machines, which we can just make use of like it would be a virtual desktop.
Yeah. And have that desktop follow you as well.
Exactly.
So you're not logging on and off in between, which I know can be quite cumbersome sometimes.
And when we talk about this moving between the floors, we also have a concept now in place that allows to address other scenarios in which I might normally not be able to work. So what if the data center is not available because the servers crashed, because the cooling is not working, or worst case, and we see it over and over again, and we saw it also in the healthcare sector happening, that a cryptolocker hits and encrypts all the machines. So being flexible, being agile, having a disaster recovery concept to work in the worst case scenario, this is what we, with the same device, with the same access models, with the same username and password, even if we want, can realize, so that I, as a user, do not need to know, is it now the productive, full operational environment, or is it the disaster recovery? So it should, just with a glimpse of an eye, swap over without any interaction, if I want to have it this way.
Yeah. And talking of encrypting data, security is obviously a huge concern when you're managing patient data. So what are the main challenges that have to be overcome with that?
So one of the main challenges we see as of today is this, and we hear it in the news everywhere, I guess, is zero trust. We need to make sure that the data is not being stored in a way that other persons can access it, or at least easily access it. And we also know, I guess, as a matter of fact, that devices get stolen, that devices with medical information might get stolen. We need to make sure that no personal identifiable information, that no information about the persons that currently are in the hospital, and this is also me as an employer in there, might get lost. And we need to make sure that at the same time, when someone is accessing a device, I always need to make sure that this is in a secure context, because maybe the device next to me, maybe the person next to me is compromised, has Trojan horse or any virus on it. So we need to make sure to have security zones from an access perspective, but also from the data segregation itself.
And what about data privacy? John, if we're sending patient data and images to private homes for clinicians working remotely, how do we ensure that is compliant?
Yeah, I think this is, during COVID pandemic, the trust responded with the natural solution they were used to, that common solution, the VPN. And the VPN was used primarily to allow these workstations to be connected from a home environment. So patient data was traversing that VPN and ended up on an endpoint in a potentially non-secure environment. They cannot guarantee the security of that clinician's home or what other devices are on that network. That you're on the home broadband with your kids' network devices plugged in as well. We don't know if they're compromised, and they can potentially impact that PACS workstation, that PACS data. But not just that, it's the VPN, fundamentally how you support that endpoint. Can you keep it patched and up to date? How are you making sure the AV is up to date? I had a really interesting chat with a head of radiology the other day, and he said their support model for remote radiology was best endeavors, is what he called it. He said it was patching and updating was a hit and miss approach. Having the logistics to tell the clinician to turn their device on, connect the VPN so they could push down the latest update or the latest version of that PACS software was very, very difficult, very hit and miss. And indeed, during what they agreed with the clinicians was that out of hours, there was no support. So if that PACS workstation had any issues, had the wrong version, the VPN couldn't connect, they had to then get in their car and drive into the hospital to work. That was the support solution for that. And that's where Citrix and having a centralized virtual desktop that can be managed in the data center by the 24/7 on-call support team that can be delivered without the need for that VPN to a clinician's home on an endpoint that doesn't then therefore have any data on it, just keyboard and mouse strokes and screen refreshes, is a much more secure solution, a much simpler solution, not only to implement, but then also to support ongoing.
Yeah. I can relate to that engineer that said it's best endeavors.
Yeah.
Being in that role, it sometimes it does come down to best endeavors. You want to do better, but
It did. I mean, Cheryl, we talked about it the other day where, how many of your endpoints out there were all patched at any one time? 60% was like a good range of these devices out there on a VPN. You take that to something as important as a PACS workstation with the type of clinical impact that could have. It needs to be up to date, it needs to be the latest version, it needs to be secure.
Absolutely. So we know healthcare providers are tied to legacy systems as well. What are the challenges moving from those old systems into a solution like this? And John, if I start with you, how can IT teams manage it?
Yeah, I think, again, this comes down to some of the, not only misconceptions, but I think some of the fear of IT departments that Citrix is a complex solution, or they don't actually know what Citrix is. And what we indeed find is that Citrix is often used for those legacy applications. The great thing about Citrix is we can install our agent on a more legacy operating system, or perhaps a legacy browser, for instance. So, the old IEs of the world that we've had to deal with, Cheryl, in our careers, and delivering those old clinical applications because they needed IE8 or, dare I say, IE6 even. Citrix can help with that. So we can bridge that gap between legacy applications, legacy constraints like Java OS, Silverlight, for instance, and the more modern Windows 10 or even Windows 11 desktop, and bring the two together to deliver a consistent experience for the clinicians, but also secure experience when it comes to older operating systems.
And Christian, same question, but from an end user point of view, the clinicians and the radiologists who are using this day in and day out, how do they transition across from old to new solutions?
That's a very good question, because what do they expect? And what I, as a user, would expect is, in best case, everything should stay the same. Everything should look like as it always looked, isn't it? And we just heard these examples that Citrix, any application, any location, any device, that's our story. So it has always been, and this is about simplification. We can deliver the old applications the user would expect to have. At the same time, we can have the modern application, both delivered through the same access model, the Citrix Workspace app. And it's about simplification, as we said, and simplification, and this combined with security. We no longer need to make this trade of usability versus security. We can have both at the same time, because the Workspace app and its app protection, all the different other features for security, can now enhance security. Means I, as a user, no longer need to know when is something secure, how is something secure. I just use the application as I was used to the other day before. This allows us at the same time to change the operating systems, to modernize the infrastructure wherever the application should reside, in my data center, in a managed environment from a partner, or maybe in a cloud hosted location, or all at the same time, because we show the user just through the single pane of configuration all the applications, desktops, and data the user needs in the daily life. So this ties together with then training for me, which is the same like onboarding. We just need to have a look in the job offerings that exist as of today in healthcare sector. How many people would I need to onboard? How many people would I need to train? And then imagine that we're moving to a new application. So changing the overall look could be a very huge impact when we already have limited resources for IT management and updating process, and then also training. So I think this is one of the most important things to keep in mind for the next years, where a lot of applications will need to be updated, because more and more operating systems that as of today support these browsers and SDKs we need are no longer supported, and then we are at risk. Then we are at risk to use operating systems in healthcare which do not have support, and this is becoming a very critical situation then.
Yeah. And do you think teleradiology and telemedicine is here to stay? Do you think this would strip out face-to-face consultations in the future? Christian, if I start with you, what does the future of healthcare look like?
It's not just here to stay, it's here to change the way we work together. So nuclear medicine, telemedicine, and also remote surgery. When we have a look recently, I think it was on LinkedIn, read that the Universitätsmedizin Essen, I don't know how to tell this in English. So Universitätsmedizin Essen is already using HoloLens to assist to have an augmented reality view of what is exactly in front of me and where do I need to have a closer look. We saw and today heard about the use case here with Cornwall Hospital, where we also have this telemedicine. We have the different use cases in EMEA also. It's not just the only one use case. We have many hospitals where we are adopting these. And I recently also saw an article about AI, where AI is assisting with pre-screening the images and to then hint us where should we have a closer look. So technology will assist, technology will be there to make our life easier, and we can adopt it. And I think we must adopt it, because we have more and more cases to work on. We have more and more customers to serve. And I think the retirement and at the same time also the talent acquisition are things that will bring us to new challenges, but maybe also new opportunities. Maybe I am the knowledge worker that can sell my knowledge as a hospital to other hospitals. Maybe I can be the consultant for others to give them advice. Maybe I can also even offer my infrastructure as a service to others. So to smaller hospitals or to individuals that would like them to advise their customers, their patients on their own. So new business models could be created from this as well.
Yeah. John, do you have any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, how are trusts going to deal with this huge shortage that's coming? Despite best efforts, this is a report on the Royal College of Radiologists. They said there's a lot of radiologists didn't retire during COVID just to deal with the backlog, but actually with that big retirement looming for some of the radiologists, they're now short-staffed by about 33%. So that's almost 2,000 extra consultants are going to be needed to deal with the pre-coronavirus sort of level of demand for scans. So that's a huge problem that's looming. How are they going to deal with that? For me is looking at a regional reporting approach. So we've got a lot of these regional PACS solutions being put in place, but also perhaps it's going to be a regional reporting, so they can deal with a central pool of radiologists for, say, the whole of a county or a number of hospitals who group together as a regional reporting base. And then they're able to use each other's consultants to deal with the peaks in demands and sort of the specialties that are needed. So what is the IT solution that's going to underpin that? That's what I would be thinking. Could Citrix have a part to play here in providing a more regional, centralized, single PACS approach to remote radiology? So that would be a really big move for me that I think could be really impactful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to you both now to share some more details on the solution. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to you both for so much insight today. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with some of my customers who are already keen to learn more and learn about how it could potentially help them. So with that, I'll hand over to you now. Thank you both.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, so today, again, let's just go over those current challenges. The things that we see day to day now in the workplace is that current state has changed. Workers are looking for a more hybrid approach. They're looking for remote options to their work. Recent research done in the US actually said that 37% of jobs can be performed entirely from home. And almost half of workers would actually prefer a hybrid work arrangement and environment. So, things have already changed. That change is being felt since COVID about this hybrid working. And we need to rethink how we provide that real estate, how we manage our offices and deliver not just ways they can work very efficiently remotely, but actually making better use of our real estate. And I think that impact for healthcare could be a really positive one. What if we're able to have more wards, or we're able to have more remote clinics or more pop-up clinics approach? That remote radiology piece as well is something we keep talking about today. Could that positively impact some of this shortfall? Can we actually have a real positive change here now due to the outcomes of COVID? And also what it could also entail is accessing more talent. So how can we then perhaps, certainly with radiology, recruit in from elsewhere, from within our region, not just the UK, but potentially wider into Europe or even into other parts of the world? Could we outsource that radiology shortfall to specialist companies or services or clinicians that can act as a pool of resource no matter where they are globally? So there's some really important aspects here that we need to think about, and how we prepared for them. Is a VPN and a PACS workstation being sent to someone's home the right solution here?
Good, thank you, John. And I think a lot of people will now question, why Citrix? What is it about Citrix? Why does Citrix matter to me? And this looks like a marketing slide. I guess you can read the text on the right hand yourself. But what is this slide all about? It is about that we believe at Citrix that it needs a digital workspace, a complete digital workspace solution as a foundation to have secure access. We just heard about the challenges that might exist when we deliver work from home, because we have certain security and compliance requirements that exist. And at the same time, also security requirements when we look at securing the access, securing the device that wants to access our applications and desktops. So we need to make sure that a zero trust approach exists and a zero trust model has been built out. And at the same time, it shouldn't overcomplicate things. It should simplify. This is what our users expect. It should simplify access to applications and desktops. In best case, it should even look the same as we just said as before. And this is what Citrix can realize. Unify work with the applications and desktops as they exist, from physical as well as from virtual apps and desktop delivering machines. And this can be hosted inside your data center, as well as we heard, it can come from any cloud provider of your choice. So only Citrix provides these different solutions as of today in this unified management approach. But let's have a closer look to what this can be. And John, do you want to give us an overview of what it was for Cornwall?
Yeah, I think this is where we can jump into, I guess, the nuts and bolts of what we actually did at Cornwall. We've talked a lot about the whys and the importance of remote radiology and security, etc. But this is kind of really the how we did this. So yeah, if we just start on the left here with our endpoints. So this is the endpoints in the hospital. This could be an endpoint in the clinician's home. or indeed in a partner location. So there's that outsourced service, that third party, or perhaps another hospital who are dealing with some of the backlog for you due to the radiologist shortage. The Citrix Workspace app is often installed already on many of these devices. It's a common application used for things like EPRs. You think of the Epics and the Cerner EPRs of this world. The Citrix Workspace app is already needed. So it's often already existing in many, many trusts, and it's a very easy install and download. So the big thing here with Citrix Cloud now in the middle here, this is I guess the perceived complexity of Citrix. This is where IT departments often think they need a very complex design, implementation, sizing, and high availability of the Citrix backend. So the bits that make Citrix work. But actually, this can be done very simply with Citrix Cloud. It's hosted, maintained, managed, kept evergreen by Citrix. So that big part of that perceived complexity is taken away from the IT department and delivered back as a service. And this is something we very much use for the Cornwall proof of concept, just to show how easy this would be to set up. And then on the right here, this final piece, we've got the actual PACS application, the information, the patient data, and the identity of those radiologists. So how we did this with our POC, we actually installed the virtual delivery agent, so the Citrix agent on a physical PACS workstation in the PACS in the department, radiology department. So we installed that agent and registered that with something called a cloud connector. So this is the real key piece here. This is the element that acts sort of as a proxy that sits between the healthcare provider's applications and data they want to deliver and the Citrix cloud service. So that's a very small installation on a Windows server, and it just requires an outbound 443 internet connection to the cloud service. So very simple, very secure, not tons of firewall rules and opening many different ports and connectivity. It's a very, very simple implementation. In fact, we did that with Cornwall in less than 2 hours. We had the entire solution connected up and running in about an hour and a half, actually, in that first session. We then went on and had a second session to install this physical workstation, and we were able to prove within 2 sessions a home radiologist was able to connect in and bring up PACS images and manipulate and move around images. So we very, very quickly proved the concept here. It didn't take very long, and it's something we can do again and again for other trusts. And how they expanded that out, I mean, once we showed the concepts and the solution worked, is where they delivered 30 virtual machines that have a GPU-enabled virtual desktop. So that desktop is using an NVIDIA graphics card to provide a highly HDX experience for those clinicians, so they can provide them those high-definition images on a virtual machine to their homes. So again, it's a very simple solution to then expand out and provide more use cases. And then finally, we've got the clinicians there at home. We're able to log in not only on a machine in the hospital, but they can log into that PACS workstation at home. In fact, we used an off-the-shelf endpoint, a very light touch endpoint that they could use at home, but they did have a PACS capable screen. And that's a really important piece here as well, that the screen is the PACS workstation screens that they used to, so we can provide that high-definition image. And then finally, we've got there as well partner locations. So this is where once you've enabled this solution for your actual clinicians, they are now looking to expand this solution to other third parties, other people who can deal with their backlog and the pressures that they're under. Christian, I'll now hand over to you, I guess, just to talk about where Citrix DAS fits in this, where Citrix as a service can really help with this kind of solution.
Thank you very much. And I guess we now already saw that desktop as a service can mean very many different things. It can mean exactly what you are looking for. For some of the customers, it means to have a solution that is a turnkey desktop solution where I can just turn the key, start the desktop, and have a desktop that offers me Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Office 365, and maybe my other line of business applications. For someone else, it could mean a real desktop as a service, a managed service, where someone is taking the whole thing and providing it as a service. But the very important thing about Citrix Desktop as a Service is whatever it means to you, we can deliver it, and we can offer with our partners together the service you are looking for. What you expect, what customers of ours expect, is that we improve the experience on both sides, on the back end, so the management, the delivery, the operations, as well as for the user and user experience that improves, that is simple and secure at the same time. So simplified deployment. And now we also look at the reduce of costs, because if it's not running in your infrastructure, if you're not the one that needs to upgrade the backend infrastructure, but can focus on what's really essential for you, the applications, desktop, and data, we can reduce costs on the operations. But there are other use cases as well, as like, let's think of external contractors, partners, the Red Cross maybe, that accesses your systems as well. So we can have security segregation. We can have these desktops and applications, maybe jump hosts, on a pay-as-you-go subscription. And with this, we can also shift these costs to different cost centers. So there are many different other opportunities at the same time to modify the costs, reduce the costs, and maybe even sell this as a service to someone else that maybe wants to leverage your PACS systems, as we today, as an example, have heard. Anyhow, and this is one of the important messages here in the middle, Gartner projects by 2024 that these solutions will become more and more important, and that you can stay efficient in your delivery and also access models this way. And when we look at, again, the telemedicine and the hospitals and the healthcare industry, there are also many things in. And I would like to hand over to John again to go more into the details about what this means, not only for Cornwall, but also for others in the healthcare industry. Could you give us some examples?
Yeah, thanks, Christian. So yeah, I mean, Royal Cornwall were an existing Citrix house, so they already were using Citrix to deliver access to their EPR and to a number of their core clinical applications. So very quickly overnight, when COVID hit, they were able to allow their staff to access their critical applications, their EPR, using Citrix. So that was already there and available to them. And indeed, a number of trusts I worked with during the pandemic, we were able to, for instance, in a large trust, were able to implement home working for all of their GP practices. So they had around 2,000 GPs that were able to work from home using the Citrix cloud solution. We implemented that from start to finish in 2 weeks, and we helped them, guided them through the solution, and their doctors, their GPs, were able to provide a telemedicine solution working from home into their virtual desktops, or indeed their physical desktops that were in those GP practices that were now closed. So it was a really, really great solution, and showed how simple that could be set up. In fact, my own hospital where I used to work, because Citrix was already in place, because they had that Follow Me desktop available to all staff in the hospital, not just clinicians, but back office staff, administrators, non-clinical, everybody could work from home instantly. It's just great how they could just normal working day to day for them is going and working from home securely already. So the impact to them was not really felt. They were just picked up and started working from home. And I think that shows the power of a well implemented Citrix solution. It can just feel like a normal day to day work. It didn't feel like a big panic to get everybody working from home. Again, with Cornwall, because we expanded the solution into this radiologist piece for these 30 radiologists, and showed probably quite a complex or potential complex experience, and HDX experience that was required could be implemented quite quickly and quite easily using Citrix. The trust is now looking at doing a Follow Me desktop, much like Portsmouth, in their emergency department. So they want to have a virtual desktop that follows their ED staff as they work through the patient care pathway, through the hospital, through the busy emergency department, and have that single desktop that follows them throughout their working day. In fact, we've got other trusts, and there's some case studies on our website where they implemented this in ED, and they did a time and motion study and found that they were saving up to 40 minutes per shift not having to keep logging in again and again and again and bringing up clinical applications and data again and again. And that 40 minutes was given back to 40 minutes extra time with patients, which is what matters here. It's that returning time to care. I think there's some other solutions as well that we can talk about, where not just for healthcare, but how Citrix can enable that sort of remote contact center, that remote working in a much broader range of services, not just for healthcare. Christian, do you want to talk a bit about that now on the next slide?
Sure. So as you just introduced the slide, it's about working remote and working maybe from home. And we're focusing here on the contact centers. We're focusing on what's essentials to our customers in the end, because they are contacting us. That's why it's called contact centers, is it? And getting contact centers remote must not only mean to sit at home. We can also be very agile here with getting other contact center locations into place. So for a 24-hour shift, or in a situation where we do not have the proper amount of employees to scale out, if there is a critical situation where we would need punctual maybe, or for a longer time, more employees. And there are also future models. I just experienced it myself on the Munich airport, where virtual assistants are starting to help people on the airport. And with pressing a button, you are connecting to the contact centers. So maybe also looking forward into the healthcare sector, this could change. And maybe, John, do you have any customers that already adopted remote contact centers instead of having the physical on-premises offices and change the way they work?
Yeah, certainly from a healthcare perspective, it wasn't a remote contact center, but it was actually a remote typing pool. So a specialist clinical typing pool that were taking the recordings from clinicians that they were doing, their patient notes that they record into their digital dictaphones and upload to the clinical system. We actually ended up having a shortage of these clinical typists, this pool of typists who would deal with these very complex typing requirements of the clinicians. And we were, number were retiring. We couldn't recruit from our local area. So we had to look at ways of outsourcing that solution. So what we found is that using Citrix, we were able to meet the GDPR and the security requirements of keeping those patient notes, those really critical recordings, safe and secure in our data center, in our hospital. But we were able to use Citrix to outsource the typing pool ability to a service that was actually hosted in Mumbai. So it was a team of these specialist clinical typists who could then type up those patient notes and provide a very quick turnaround time to the backlog of data, backlog of patient notes that needed typing. And they were able to do that, not just listening to recordings, but typing, pausing, using foot pedals, all using a Citrix virtual desktop that was located thousands of miles away in Mumbai. So it was a really, really good use case and shows how Citrix can adapt to many different use cases.
Good. Thank you very much, John. And with this, we come to our wrap up. We hope that it was really interesting for you to see what Citrix can deliver, what Citrix solutions exist also as of today that can grant access to the applications, desktops, to the machines that maybe already exist as of today, but also change the way you maybe deliver applications and desktops today or host them. And that there are future concepts that can be a new way of working, a new business model also for you to sell resources like intellectual properties or existing machines and access to these machines to others. If you thought this is interesting and would like to learn more about the details or would like to work with us together on how we can provide solutions like this together with you in your environment, then please feel free to contact us. You got our email addresses here as well as our LinkedIn profiles, and we're happy to get in touch with you. Thank you very much.